Hey folks, Lenny Lawson here, the Car Guru, and today we're going to be talking about a very, very important subject for the majority of car buyers, because the majority of car buyers buy used cars, and there are a lot of mistakes made. Many times folks don't know what they're buying. They don't know what they should pay for it. They don't know what to look for, and that's a lot of don't knows, and it's what they don't know is what can hurt them. Now, I just did a little math here just a minute ago. My I think about 46 years I've been doing this in the car business. And we sold an average of 50 used cars a month. And if you do the math, I've sold a little over 27,000 used cars. How many have you sold? How many have you bought? Because you know what? We had to buy every one of those. No, we didn't go to an auction and buy them. We didn't buy them from individuals just wanting to sell their car. That happens a lot. Most of them we traded for, but we still had to buy them. We had to look at that vehicle as if we were buying it. And there's a certain percentage of the time that we made a wrong bet. And what's a wrong bet when you're trading for cars? It is missing something. Missing a slipping transmission. Missing an air conditioner compressor that's not going on and off. Let's see, what else? Missing body damage, previous body damage. Before we had Carfax and what's that other one? Experian, AutoCheck. Before we had those, the only thing that we had was our senses. We had to see mismatched paint. We had to feel tape lines. We had to inspect the front part of the frame in front of the engine, where it connects to the bumpers. We had to look underneath the car. We had to see if it had any body damage before we knew that it had body damage. But now it's easier, right? Well, not necessarily. So there are still a lot of potential pitfalls that you can fall into as a used car buyer. Now, one of the things that I really enjoy doing, and this is pretty clear based on what I talk about on this show, I like buying old cars, vintage cars. And I was just looking through a list of things that I do to make sure that I don't make a mistake. I still make mistakes. My biggest mistake ever was the 65 Mustang convertible that I just finished restoring. I lost more money on that one car than I made on the previous probably 15 or 20 cars that I sold, vintage cars. And I sell a lot of those. And it was depressing, quite frankly. I was so disappointed in myself that I let that get so out of hand. And I've restored a lot of cars. This was a comedy of errors. It was all begun when I made a bad purchase decision because I really didn't pay close enough attention when I bought the car. That's when the mistake is made, whether you're a car dealer or you're an individual. You make the mistake when you buy it, when you fail to do the things you need to do. Okay, so what are the steps that I use when buying a vintage car? They definitely apply to you. Number one is the research. Knowing what I want, knowing what makes sense for me to buy. Am I buying to keep it, hold it, or to flip it? Now, you're probably not buying a used car to flip it. You're buying it to use it. But do you know what you want? Do you know what you really need? The make, the model, the year, any specific features that you're looking for? This is something that you have to have clarified in your mind. Next, you have to study the market. Part of the research phase is familiarizing yourself with typical prices, availability, the condition of the car, the price ranges. Now, I use, antique car websites like Hemmings, ClassicCars.com. Bring a Trailer is the one I use most of the time. Before I buy a car, and I'm looking at, I think I mentioned this earlier, I'd really like to have a late 50s, early 60s Porsche 356. It was just a really neat early Porsche. But the problem is they're all out of my price range. And if you buy something that's too far or too cheap, there's a reason that it's cheap. And then you have to dig into that. But you do have to study the market. You have to know what price ranges are based on condition. You know, if I'm wanting to buy a late model Honda Accord, for example, then I need to see what other late model Accords equipped like that one are bringing on the market. And that's one of the things you have to really make sure you do is drill down to make sure that the options are comparable to the vehicle that you're interested in. I mean, are you looking at an LX or a LS or DX or whatever they call them now? There are all different types of models. Is it leather or is it cloth? What features does it have? Does it have a sunroof or not? You have to make sure, in other words, that you're comparing apples and apples. Okay, so the second phase is you have to set a budget. You have to understand and clarify what you can afford. I mean, how many people go out and shop for a car? And matter of fact, I saw a letter from a customer. They had sent it wasn't a letter, it was an email that they had sent to us at my dealership in Greenville. And they were just so upset because they came in to buy a vehicle and their budget was $350 a month. When they left, their payment was $700 a month. Come to find out, they didn't buy that vehicle from me. They sent the email to the wrong dealership. We hadn't sold them a car. We dug down, we called them, and they said, no, I didn't buy it in Greenville. You know, it was one of those situations. We're real sorry that happened to you, but we're not the culprits. But can you imagine? Can you imagine the lack of willpower there? And, you know, they even, in their email, say, y'all made me do it. No, they didn't make you do anything. You did it. You know, hold yourself accountable for making a bad decision. Understand what your budget is. You know, you got to consider the initial cost of the car. You've got to consider maintenance expenses. What's the insurance going to cost for this car? I would never buy a car in today's market unless I knew what the insurance is going to cost. Let's say they're getting ready to go out and buy that Honda Accord. I don't care if it's new. Get a VIN number, pull it offline, call your insurance agent. Give them the VIN number. Say, what's it going to cost me per month to insure this car? Is it going to be more than the car I'm trading in or less? You need to know that because that's a part of your monthly or annual expenses on that car. Fuel economy. I mean, is it going to get better or worse gas mileage than what you're getting now? But maintenance, I mean, that's kind of hard to predict, but you know, you can find out what kind of oil it uses. I've had people buy vehicles that require premium fuel, and they were surprised by that. When they end up coming back to me and they saying, I didn't know this thing used premium fuel. Well, my salesperson should have told them that to begin with, but they should have inquired about that as well because there's a big difference, as you know, between the cost of regular unleaded and premium unleaded. Okay, I'm going to take my first break. I'll be back here in just a minute. Okay, let's keep rolling here. We're buying a used car. And you know, we understand what we want. We've set a budget, and now we need to inspect the car. I'm sorry, but if you're one of those folks out there that are willing to buy a used car that you have never driven, then I don't feel sorry for you. You know, these people that buy cars from Carvana, for example, they have the car delivered to their house, and they've never driven it. They have no idea. They may have driven other cars like it, but many people don't. They just say, oh, I want a BMW 3 Series. So they go to Carvana's website and they order a BMW 3 Series. They've never sat in it. You know, they're looking at maybe a condition report or a description, but they don't know. They've never smelled it. You know, that's another thing. What if it was a smoker's car and you get in it and you hate the smell of a cigarette? What are you going to do then? You're going to send it back? What if you can't send it back for that particular reason? That could be a problem. But I just don't understand people who buy cars without looking at them. You know, you look at the body condition. If it's an older car, you're looking for rust. You're looking for frame damage, any signs of previous accidents. It very well could show clean on a Carfax, but it could have had the front end knocked off of it. And the people didn't want to turn it into their insurance company, so they paid for it out of their pocket. And here you are, you've bought a car that's been wrecked and you thought it was an undamaged car. And then the mechanical condition. I mean, you know, you need to drive the car. Does it have check engine light on? Are there transmission issues? Is the transmission slipping? What about brakes, suspension? Does it have recalls on it? I mean, like for right now, Toyota is having tremendous issues with the Tundra, and they're having to replace engines left and right. And let's say that you're looking at a Tundra. Do you want to buy a car that you're going to immediately have to turn around and have the engine replaced in it? Or a car that's actually, they want you to park it because it's got Takata airbags in it, and you're not supposed to be driving it at all. These are things that you have to check. The only way that you can find out for sure is to call the dealership that sells that brand of car and have them pull a warranty history on the car, and also to see if there's any open recalls. I would do that regardless of where I'm buying the vehicle, or have the salesperson or the sales manager at the dealership get you that information. What if it had been a real problem car while it was under warranty, and that's the main reason that people traded it in? Well, if it was a problem car for them, it may be a problem car for you. And if the warranty expires pretty soon, then it's all on you from then on. So that's worrisome. That's another reason to check out the mechanical condition of the car. And then be sure to look at the interior of the car. I mean, examine the upholstery, the dashboard, the trim. These are, sometimes you'll see a stain in a seat and you'll think, oh, that'll come out. No, it won't come out because it's been there for about 2 years. Verify the car's history. Where was it titled? How many states has it been in? I mean, I've seen cars that have transferred, like cars with less than 5,000 miles on them, an antique car that I'm trying to buy, and it's had 8 different owners. There's a problem. I don't like that. How come it's had 8 owners? I mean, that alone. If a car has had, like if it's a modern car, not a vintage car, and it's changed hands 4 or 5 times, I'm not even going any further than that. That's enough. What if the first owner was a rental car company? How's that make you feel? It hasn't had just one owner. It's had hundreds and thousands. Everybody drove that car, had different driving habits, and many of them didn't care about the car, and they would abuse it. They would drive it hard. They would curb the wheels and tires. They, just abuse the car. And others would drive it like they drive their car. You never know. Some people would smoke in it, some not. So, do you want Hertz to be the first owner of the car that you're buying or thinking about buying? I'm not sure I would. Nor would I want a car from New York or New Jersey or Michigan. If it was up there, it's been in a lot of salty roads. And it may not be rusting now, but at some point, all the little nooks and crannies underneath that vehicle's chassis, it's going to start rusting. And when you try to trade it in to a dealer, they're going to look at that history and they're going to go, uh-oh, Michigan car. So that's not a good thing. Now, one thing that is different on buying a vintage car, and you don't really have to do this, is verifying authenticity. Like, okay, so I was looking at this 356 Porsche. It's a 65 model. It's in South Carolina, so I kind of like that. Same owner for 15 years, kind of like that. And so he disclosed that it's had a replacement engine. Well, what was the engine before and what is the engine now? And I would need to see what the original engine was. And you can pull a Porsche certificate of authenticity and you can find out what engine, including the engine number, that it was born with. I mean, was it the higher performance engine or the standard engine? What did they replace it with? What proof do they have that they replaced it with that engine? Because it can make, on that type of car, it can make a $20,000 to $30,000 difference in the value of it just because it has the wrong engine. Now, if I'm buying a modern vehicle and it's got modifications, we'll trade for a vehicle and it's had performance modifications like aftermarket wheels, different brakes. It's had the computer reprogrammed to make the turbo put out more boost. These are things that a lot of young people do right now. Also on full-size trucks, we know what they'll do to them. They'll lift them to the sky. Sometimes they'll put a 2-inch lift and sometimes they'll put a 4, 5, or 6-inch lift. What does that do? Well, it screws up the vehicle. I mean, if you think that you can just drop that vehicle down to its normal height and everything's going to return to normal, you don't know that because all of those all of those drive gears, all of the bearings in the front suspension, the angle of the drive shaft, all of those have been changed while this car's been driven, and that puts additional stress on the vehicle and could shorten the life of those components. And, it's that, again, that's a vehicle that you want to steer clear of. Now, on old cars, you're going to have to rely on probably the people who restore the vehicle, the people who have owned it for a long time. If they don't have any documentation, they got nothing. They've got a completely restored 65 Mustang with no receipts, no paperwork. I'm not interested. I've got to have history. History matters to me. On a newer car, same thing. I mean, you can check online resources. You can look at the history of the vehicle. You might be able to find out where it was sold new. That would be wonderful. If it's a local vehicle, then you can call the dealership, and they might have the records if they're willing to disclose that to you. I would. If anybody came to me and said, yeah, this vehicle was sold new at your dealership, can you tell me anything about it? I'll go right into the computer system and tell them everything they need to know. I will not disclose the previous owner's name or phone number or anything like that. But as far as the vehicle is concerned, they deserve to know that, in my opinion. And then after that's all said and done, I've got to negotiate a price. I've got to find out, what am I going to offer these people for this vehicle as a trade-in? What are you going to be willing to pay to somebody that has their vehicle sitting in the front yard with a for sale sign on it? You can't just go in there. Most people don't go in there and just give whatever the people are asking. Unless it's a really rare, scarce vehicle, you still need to make sure that it's priced on the market. And there's all kinds of resources to do that. If you have a question about a particular car, you can always call me, 423-552-2020. I just don't want to go into a dealership with my trade-in not knowing basically what it's worth. I don't want to buy a car, certainly, that I don't have a really good idea what a fair market value is. It just doesn't make sense to do that. Now, if you're buying a vehicle from an individual, you better make sure that the paperwork is in order, because there's a lot of scams out there. We all know that. You need to ensure that the title is clear, that they have a title. Just because they have a title doesn't mean it's clear, because that could be another title. They could have gone to the courthouse. They said, hey, I lost my title. And when they get that new title, they go borrow money against it. And so, but they still have the old title, and that's the one they're trying to transfer to you. And that you find out the hard way that it's got a lien on that car when you go to register it. That would be a nightmare, but that happens every day in this country when people buy cars from individuals. Go to your DMV or where you register vehicles, take the title that you have before you've bought the car, and say, could you check this for any outstanding liens? It could have a mechanic's lien on it. That's where a shop works on a vehicle and the people don't pay them. So they have the VIN number and they go file a mechanic's lien. And then you can't transfer title to yourself, and you certainly can't transfer it to anybody else if it has one of those on it. And make sure that you get a bill of sale. That's always a good idea, because you may need that to register in the state where you are. A lot of states don't have titles for old cars. They just have a registration slip. There's no title. In the state of Tennessee, if you don't have a title for a vehicle that's over 25 years old, you can go down to the courthouse and get one printed, or to the tag office. They'll print you one. So, as long as you have proof of ownership, a bill of sale, then you're good to go. That is, unless it gets challenged at some point. I've had people tell me that they bought a car 10 years ago, and one day the police show up at the door, and they say, the car that you happen to own was stolen, happened to a good friend of mine. And he had this Corvette for many years. And, he got in all kinds of trouble. He had to prove that he wasn't the guy who stole it. And so it was a very costly and frightening experience. But these are things that can happen if you don't do the research. It's easier to do now than it ever has been. But you just got to be careful and not trusting. You have to doubt. I hate to say that about our fellow human beings, but sometimes you just have to do that because they may be desperate. They may have lower ethical standards than you do. And there's all kinds of ways to get burned in this, so you just have to be careful. Okay, I'll take my last break. I'll be back here in just a minute. very early in my career in the car business, I had this guy call me and he said he wanted to sell me a car. And it was something that we needed on our used car lot. It sounded like a good car. The price sounded great. So he brought it over. We talked about it, and he sold me the car. The title was fine. He had the title in his hand. Come to find out, I didn't know this about this person, but he rebuilds totals. So he had bought this car through an auction or from an insurance company. It had supposed to have a reconstructed title, which it did. He repaired the car and then went to another state, registered the vehicle, and got a clean title. And then he sold it to me. Well, I found out about it, and I called him. And I said, you need to come back and get this car. I don't buy cars that have reconstructed title. He said, title's good on that car. I said, listen, I know that this title is good, but I can't sell this car. This car's been totaled, and you will come and get it. I will not come and get it. You pay me for it, and that car's yours. And I said, let me tell you one more thing. I know it's illegal to sell cars with a washed title, and I can find out who sold this car, who owned the car, and what insurance company totaled it. He said, when do you want me to bring a check? I said, this afternoon will be fine. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people find out that their car has a reconstructed title when, it might be 2 or 3 years later when they finally pay it off. They get the title, and they go to trade it someplace else. And they pull a modern history report, which are available now, and it shows that it had a reconstructed title. What do you do then? What if that dealer is out of business? Well, you're stuck. Your insurance company is not going to reimburse you, and you're going to have a very hard time trading that vehicle any place, and you have to disclose it. I mean, that's on you. So how do you prevent this happening? Well, the best thing to do is to buy from a new car dealer. The laws that regulate new car dealers are a whole lot stricter, and they have a whole lot more to lose from a reputational standpoint than a lot of these little corner used car lots do. And individuals can be, buying a used car from an individual can be one of the riskiest things that you can do, because they've tried to unload that car several different ways before they end up trying to sell it themselves. And so just be very careful. Do all the steps that we've talked about in this program, and I think you will be a lot safer. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. Again, if you need me, you can text me 423-552-2020 or send me an email to LennyLawson2020@gmail.com, and I'll see you next time.